am pleased to welcome our featured speaker today, Dick Bergstrom. Dick and his wife have called Bloomington home for the past 19 years. They have two sons, a freshman at the University of St. Thomas and junior at Kennedy High School, and a 15-year-old cat named Phyllis. Dick has served on the Bloomington School Board for 7 years, holding the offices of chair, clerk, and treasurer. In his free time, Dick is an amateur photographer who has a particular passion for nature photography in our local parks. When he showed me some of his work about a year ago, I was incredibly impressed and asked him if he'd ever be interested in sharing his photos with our Rotarians. So when we scheduled this meeting, I had assumed a totally different climate outside and landscape than what we normally experience in the middle of January here in Minnesota. The good news is you can see what Dick is going to show you now by getting out in your local park this week. Do it this week before it gets cold. So now with the virtual walk through the woods, please welcome Dick Bergstrom.
First of all, thank you all for the invitation. Diane, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for remembering me, beg you to want to present. And before I get too far into this presentation, thank each and every one of you for what you do for this community. It would be wrong of me, and my wife would scold me soundly if I didn't say thank you for everything that you do to contribute, to give back to this community. There are a number of faces that I recognize here. I apologize if I'm not wrote on all of your names, but I do remember your faces. And I know that there is a connection to more than one component of the city that you guys make so robust. So thank you so much for what you do. And I know that we have an actual photographer in the audience today. So I'm keen to know your thoughts, perhaps afterwards, because I don't think my ego can handle the abuse that it would most certainly get. I picked up a camera 45 years ago and quickly found that I'm much more at home, happier behind the lens than I am in front of Tim's camera. I'd much rather not be photographed than I would take the photographs. So this is me stepping out of a comfort zone, standing up in front of you. A long time ago, I thought perhaps people were fun to photograph. They are, but when you look like me and you step out of the woods with a big long lens, not so much. So I was tired of answering, who are you? What are you going to do with that picture? You know, I'm going to call the police on you. So it's okay to laugh. So I switched to wildlife, and that was a long time ago. I like to chase raptors. I thought I'd start today with one of the largest ones in the sky. This is an adult bald eagle. This was taken down right over the Minnesota River. When you're the biggest on the food chain, you can afford to get up last. And these guys wake up late. They wake up after the sun comes up. They wait for the thermals. They wait for the heat, the earth to start warming up, and they glide on thermals looking for their meal. This one was about a mile away from me, and I saw it with my lens. There were 3 of them circling in concentric circles, and if you position yourself just right, occasionally, and you wait, they'll fly right over your lens. So that's what happened here. And this guy, there's a series of shots. This guy was actually looking right straight down into the lens, but that particular shot wasn't well lit. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of money to spend on a fast lens. So consequently, the lighting is what you get. I try not to edit too much. I don't use a lot of editing software. I don't use tricks. And as we go, we'll see. So I thought I'd start with a large one, and we'll go with the little one next. So just in case you're tired of cold, all this nasty snow we're having, the below zero weather. This is everybody knows the coneflower. You may not know that it's a coneflower, but this is a purple coneflower. This is a great big old bumbler. The back legs here have what are called pollen sacs, and they're going to go grab this pollen. You can still see a little bit of it here, and they just shove it in their back with their front legs into their back legs. They have a big pocket in their pants, and they're going to go back and they're going to eat it later. And that's their energy, and it's really fun to watch those bumblebees move because when you see them, you just wouldn't think that they were able to move. Now, here's another one of, this was actually a winter shot. Do we have any wildlife enthusiasts? Anyone can tell me what these are? They have a hood, hooded mergansers. Yep. So we have the guy is the more colorful one. The gal is not. What you can't see, and part of the fun of having taken the shot is that just off camera, there's about 10 other guys, and they're all racing towards her. But he was fastest. And he got in line, and she said, "Okay, you'll do." And that's kind of how it works. So it's a lot of fun to watch these guys. I mentioned earlier that I don't use editing software. I don't take things away that are normally there. And I usually, somewhere in a presentation, I'll include a slide that shows at least a little bit of the difficulty of wildlife photography. Just sort of, if I'm standing way over here and there's something I want to shoot over there, there's almost always something in the way. And this next slide will illustrate, I hope, the efforts that wildlife goes to be hidden, all right, as well as frustrate the photographer. So if I could have just walked over to the other side, right? Well, I'm on the shoreline. This is about 75 yards out. This is, of course, a goose sitting on its nest, and it's on a beaver lodge. So they're working together. The beaver doesn't come up from underneath and steal the little goslings. The beaver doesn't even know the goose is there. But the goose actually acts as a guard. This is a security guard for anyone that comes to the beaver lodge, because the goose doesn't want anyone bugging its young. But it was frustrating for me because this one just kept ducking its head down, and I wasn't really sure. I'm looking 75 yards through a long lens, trying to find, is that what I think it is? And for me, that's the fun of being out on the trail. Is that really what I think it is? Look, there's a beaver lodge. Hey, there's something on it. Let's get closer. Let's see if I can find what that is. There's a whole bunch of series of shots that are before and after this. Digital has opened my eyes to not being quite so stingy on the shutter. When it was 35 millimeter, I was counting in my head, how much is it going to cost to process this? What'll this shot cost? It's a good shot, I like it, but I'm not going to lay on the shutter. When it's digital, I'll come home. I have 48 gigabytes of memory. There's 2 memory cards on my camera, and I'll come home with half of that full. Now, I don't use that. I don't use all of that. But that's, for those of you that don't know what a gigabyte is, it's a lot of pictures. So this one was fun, and you can find this beaver lodge is still there, and I wouldn't doubt that this year there's a goose that's looking on it. So we mentioned earlier that maybe there's a little lack of snow. What does it look like when you go out in snow? I tell people that I love winter. I absolutely adore the winter. And they look at me and say, "You're crazy." Well, why do you want to be cold? I didn't say I like to be cold. I like the winter. So if you dress right and wear hand warmers, use hand warmers, you can stay out as long as you want. And sometimes you get a decent shot. So this is 9 Mile Creek. This is just before 9 Mile. If you were to go down to Harrison Park or 106th Street, there's a little lot on 106th. You wind down 5 flights of stairs and walk towards the Minnesota River. This bridge is the last one. It'll go over, and then it ends on Queen Avenue. So you start at 106th, walk all the way down, go back up and get out. There's a little 2-car lot on Queen. And this was 4 or 5 years ago. It was just a fantastic day. It was 18 below zero after a heavy snowfall. And not too many people had come through and wiped the snow off the bridge. So I'm kind of funny that way. But I love the weather. As long as my gear will allow me to be outside, I'll be outside. And the reason I give my wife for not answering the phone is that there's no cell service down there, and You can't find me, honey? She calls 3 times when I'm out. Are you okay? Are you okay? It's nice to know somebody's thinking of you. Occasionally, that must be her now. Occasionally, you form a relationship with the wildlife. They get comfortable with you. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. You have to be there. They have to see you. They have to know that you're not a threat. There was an owl 3 years ago in the springtime that made its nest and came to rest right by one of the trails. And I was a frequent visitor down there. There were a number of folks that were down there. They were enthusiasts, and my fear and my nerves got a little rattled because, excuse me, this particular owl, for whatever reason, let you get close, and that can be dangerous. Nothing happened with this one, but one morning I was out and I stood in my spot and I called to the owl. It's a barred owl, and if you know what a barred owl says, if you call to that owl just like a cardinal, it will answer you back, or a black-capped chickadee, it will answer you back. And this one didn't answer me back, but it came to visit me, and it brought me a surprise. So I'm glad we can show this one after our meal. The barred owl, all the owls eat their prey whole. So this I believe is a vole. The tail is short and the legs are short. That's not a mouse, it's a vole or a mole, the same family. It flew right straight at me, and I thought, where's this thing going to go? And then it flared its wings at the very end and hopped up on that branch. And wouldn't you know it, I think it's because we had gotten to know each other so well that it stopped and it turned with its face into the sun. So the subject was lit, and all I had to do was lay on the shutter. There were a number of shots where it was actually right straight above me, and it was looking down at me. But fortunately, I backed away because I started getting too close. There's another shot that's in the end of my presentation that you'll see that illustrates that. But this is kind of fun. If you're not squeamish, this is how the owls go shopping. This is their grocery store. So this is an owl is a raptor. This is a barred owl. It's roughly, they can get to be about 2 feet tall. They don't weigh more than a pound, maybe 16 ounces. If you're lucky, maybe 18 ounces. They're really light. And I would encourage each of you to look up the call for the barred owl. Some people say that think that it sounds like "Who Cooks for You?" But that's an easy way to remember. I never hear that when it talks, but my wife and I go for walks. We live right by Harrison Park, and when we go for walks at night, there's that oak grove that's just to the west of Oak Grove Elementary, and these owls are out there, and I stop and I call, and every now and then they call back. So it's a lot of fun, and you can get caught up in that. This is a big raptor. Occasionally you run into, if you're lucky, a small raptor. This little guy, even though it's a nice big picture, first of all, does anyone know what this is? Anyone? Okay, this is a northern shrike. So you can tell by that little hook on the end of its beak, that denotes it as a raptor. It's just about as big as a black-capped chickadee. It's an absolutely beautiful bird. This was down by the Black Dog Power Plant in 2014. If any one of you remember, we had polar vortexes every week. And my son was asking me, "Dad, are you going to shut school down again because it's cold?" And I said, "No, the superintendent does that. I don't do that." So one of the days school was shut down, it was umpteen degrees below zero. I was down on the trail and I found this guy. Sitting with its face in the sun, which is helpful to me as an amateur photographer. And it's kind of fun to see these little guys because they are part of the food chain. If you're out on the trail and you happen to see a rodent stuck in a bush, just hanging up in a bush about this high. It isn't some kid, it didn't get thrown there by accident. Shrikes are in that neighborhood. That's their pantry. They'll kill it, they'll hang it up, and that way no one else can get it. And then they'll come back and get it. So look that up, don't take my word for it. Remember, I'm a rookie. Staying current with the theme of small, this happens to be something that everybody, at least everyone I know, is looking for in their backyard. Now, I had mentioned that all the shots in this presentation are Bloomington wildlife. They're taken in Bloomington. They're not exclusive to Bloomington. This is the only one that wasn't taken in Bloomington. This was taken up on the Gunflint Trail. One of my sisters has a cabin up there. And I was up 2-3 years ago, and I moved the feeder so that the sun was just right, so that my chair was just right, so I could get this picture. So I will admit to manipulating this particular shot. This is the only one. One of the things I like about this is that, I don't know if you can see it in this, but the bird has its eyes shut. It's literally basking in the sun. So these little guys do sit still. It sat there for 3 seconds, long enough for me to get the shot. It's just kind of fun to watch them, and they're so territorial. One of them will find the feeder, and the other one will chase it away. A quick side note, if you ever want to feed a bird, you can. There's some really neat videos on YouTube or the internet that show how to attract hummingbirds and what you need to do to set up a station where you can feed them. You see people feeding them out of your hands and whatnot, and it's very simple. Just remember not to close your hand on the bird and you'll have some fun. So we go from small to the next one will be a little bit larger. All of you have heard squirrels chirping. You've heard crows, right? So a long time ago, Grandpa told me, if you want to know where it is, follow the crows. And I always thought, what am I looking for, Grandpa? What do you mean? If you want to know where the action is, listen for the crows. And as a photographer, I learned this a long time ago. It's a trick of the trail. Listen for the crows and have your camera ready. And if you do and you're ready, this might happen. So this is a immature bald eagle. They don't get their white head and white tail until they're about 5 years old. And that's a crow. Now I like this shot for a number of reasons, but one, you can tell the size. So everyone knows the size of a crow, and you think you know the size of an eagle, but you really never can get that close. And when you do, their wings are by their side. So this gives you a good shot. This was down at 9 Mile Creek a few years back, and I heard the crows. I had the lens up, and just by pure happenstance, they flew right straight over my camera. It was a lot of fun. Most of the time, I've got my head in the clouds, and not just because I'm tall, but I'm always looking. I'm always looking for the birds. I'm looking for the raptors. I'm looking for something to shoot. But occasionally, it's worth your time to look down. People have asked me, why do you spend so much time at the creek? There's nothing there. You know, you got to go to the lakes. You got to go here. You got to go over to the nature center. Go way across over into East Bloomington. That's where everything is. And, you know, silly me, I didn't realize it wasn't supposed to be down there. Occasionally, when you look down, you find something worth looking at. Now, everybody who's wet a line knows what that is, yes? Don't say fish. What type of fish is that? And northern. And I heard gar. I have seen gar in the water. So I showed the owl going to the grocery store. This is grocery store for some other animals that we've seen. Believe it or not, this was, well, I'm going to tell you, this was about 18 inches long. And I'm going to say at least 1.5 pounds, maybe a little more. This was in a deep part of the creek, midsummer, and I think it was trapped. I don't think it could get, there was a part of the creek that was too shallow, so it just lived there all summer. And it was only a matter of time before somebody found it And I'm fortunate that I was there and I happened to get a picture of that. So that's the same northern. That was the day after the picture of the northern. Okay, and you know what has it in its, who knows what that is? Yeah, great blue heron. And that's how they eat. So this guy speared it with its bill and then couldn't get it off. Frequently, that's how these great blue herons die, that or choking. It couldn't get it off, and I'm thinking, it's not going to fly away. It's got a 2-pound northern on it. I could help it, but you can't. You just got to leave them be. So what it did was it went over to this sandbar, right over here, and it put its beak down and it picked up a big foot and it pulled the fish off, and then the fish tried to get away. And I followed that, and then it found it. It killed it. I was going to say it beat it into submission, but it killed it, and then it swallowed it whole head first. And that's interesting. But when it did that, it stepped into the shadows, and of course my camera does not shoot well in the shadows, so I have a series, but it wasn't worth publishing. I like this shot for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is that I believe that we have an obligation to keep our community and our creeks and rivers clean. And just over the shoulder here, you see something orange up there. That is a Frito bag. Now, I never got the impression with this shot that somebody just ate it and threw it. It was up on the banks after a heavy rain about 2 weeks before this shot. But it did make it into our creeks and rivers, and it would have made it down into the Minnesota River, and that would have eventually made it into the Mississippi and down into the Gulf. And so if you just think, take that bag. When you're done with it, it's okay. Have a snack on the trail. That's fine. Put it in your pocket. Go throw it where it needs to be thrown. Make sure that you do the best that you can to keep it out of the creeks and rivers. So the theme here, I don't know if you've guessed it, but I'm kind of going from large to small to large to small. So the next one shouldn't surprise you. Occasionally, if I don't have my head in the clouds and I'm watching where my feet are going, I'm surprised. So this was a neat surprise. So these are our baby snapping turtles that just had hatched. You can see well, you can't really see it. Their eyes here and here, they look black. That's because they're wet. They had dried out. They have to dry just a little bit when they come out of the egg. It's like freeze dry. It's a quick hardening of their shell, and then off they go to the races. So this one it's a unique story, unique to me anyways. There were 15, 20 eggs that were hatched that day. And I happened to come across this hatch, and there was a mother and a young son down there. And they were enjoying it, and it was a lot of fun. But the young son had a butterfly net and a bucket. And the young son was picking up the turtles and putting them in the bucket. And so I'm just Mr. Photographer guy with my camera, and I'm trying to mind my own business. And I'm trying to find a way to gently say, you're going to kill those turtles if you pick them up. I did the best I could to share my concern with them. The mother was just so happy that the son had an opportunity to see wildlife. He wouldn't have killed them by squishing them. If you touch them, if you come close to them, they'll stress out. They're not used to it. All they see in us we're just big predators. We're going to eat you, or we're going to step on you, or we're going to do something. It's their instincts that are guiding them to the water. So when you see things like this, they are cute. They're insanely cute, right? This was about the size of a 50-cent piece, no more. But don't touch them. Just enjoy them. Get your camera out, get your cell phone out, take a picture, a video. That's cool. Share it with your friends. Occasionally, if you ask hard enough, somebody will invite you and you can present. But it's nice to see, And again, this is Bloomington. This is right here in Bloomington. We're not there yet. We have to get through winter. But in the spring, the turtles are going to come out of the mud, out of the creeks and rivers, and they're going to go across our roads. Remember, the turtles were there before the roads. We put the obstacle in the way. If you see a turtle, if it's a painted turtle, if it's a snapping turtle, any turtle, and it's walking across the road, if you can, shepherd it in the direction it's going. If you must, pick it up very carefully. Try not to pick them up, but don't turn them around back the way they came. They'll just wait for you to leave and go back the way they were going. They don't know they're walking into harm's way. And nothing pains me more than to see some knucklehead purposely drive over a turtle. And I think we've all seen it. So enjoy them. Now, somebody talked about a black-capped chickadee, and I always carry this guy with me. It's almost like he just posed, you know. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. This is the ubiquitous black-capped chickadee. In the springtime, in about the end of February, you're going to start to hear them more and more and more. And if you whistle, they will whistle back. It's so much fun. So occasionally, I get to a point where I think, I got this, I know what I'm doing. You know, I don't necessarily think that I'm really any good at it, but I know what I'm doing on the trail. And just when I think that, nature has a way of reminding me, yeah, I don't think so. So this is an illustration, and I hope I set this shot up. Now, there are a number of social media sites that talk about coyote sightings. For those of you that can't see it or don't know, this is a coyote. This particular one I called Scar. This side of the face, sorry for getting in the way, it was perfect. The other side of the face was all, this one had been in a fight, more than one fight, and it didn't win. So this was an exceptionally cold day down by the river, and I saw this one. It was off to my right about 50 yards, and so I was kind of trying to keep pace with it, and it was pacing with me, and I'm thinking, this is great. I'm getting a great series of shots. What you can't see is it almost looks like it's looking into my lens. It actually isn't. It's looking in front of me, and it was looking in front of me the whole way. But again, I thought I was pretty cool, and I found this one, and I didn't chase it off. And so when I looked to my left, there was a great big, happy, healthy friend, another coyote, and they had been stalking me, trailing me, when I thought I was trailing this one. Yeah. Now, I want to make sure for the folks that are viewing at home, when they see this, they're not going to come and jump on you, right? They just wanted to make sure. I'm sure there was a den somewhere, and it's possible, because I go out after snow, and I'll track them to see where they come and go. It's possible I was getting close to their den, and it's possible that I was starting to make them nervous. Had I done so, they would have shown me in a way that was meant to frighten me away. They don't attack, first and foremost. So please don't let this, don't let me talk you into thinking that they're going to attack. But it was interesting for me to see that. I thought I had this one scoped out, and they were just watching me. They were just toying with me, having fun. Now, I had mentioned earlier that when you're out in nature, nature has a way of, they just go shopping. They shop and they eat wherever they can get the food. And this next shot, I think, illustrates that. So this is a female duck. All right, her mate was just out of frame, and I wasn't. I had a series of it, but it didn't turn out right. She's actually running away from her mate, and she's running away because she has a fish in her mouth. And I didn't realize. So with waterfowl, there are what called dippers, and there's divers. So a duck would be a dipper. You see their rear ends up in the water, and they go in the shallows, and they eat muck and stuff. And the divers are the ones that actually go underneath. This one had scored a fish and wasn't going to give it up. another reason to keep the creeks and waters and the watershed clean. Here's yet another one. You can't see this particular, the namesake of this bird. This is a greater Yellowlegs. It has tall, long, skinny yellow legs. There's one called a lesser Yellowlegs with short yellow legs. Guy didn't name them, but it's eating a crustacean. So if we can do the best we can to keep our creeks and waters clean, then we get to see these guys. If it's not clean, if it's not healthy, we don't get to see them. They're going to go where their food is abundant. And along those lines, has anyone seen anything like that before? It's got to be really, really cold. This was 22 degrees below zero. Again, one of my happy days. That, you've all had a root beer float? Yes? You pour it too fast, the bubbles that come up on the top of the root beer float, very, very similar. This is made from minerals in the water and maybe some man-made minerals. There's some pollution. So if you take a couple drops of oil, put it in a bucket, and use a whisker, this is what you'll get. So these things only form when it's really, really cold. Again, another reason to keep the waters as clean as we can. There's a portion of the mineral deposits that are natural mineral deposits that help this, but local creeks and rivers, you see foam on the shore when the waves whip it up. This is similar. This is another fun one. We're going to switch seasons now. This is, I think this was late May. I like this one. My son said, I can't tell it. He said, Dad, you have it upside down. Just a painted turtle getting out on an old tree stump on an incredibly calm day. Just the spillway just north of the Minnesota River. And then, of course, everyone likes young. So this is a baby great horned owl. And I was fortunate to follow, there was 2 of them. I followed them 3-4 years ago. And when it got a little older, I learned a lesson. And that lesson was pay attention to what you're doing. As a photographer, to find depth of field, I like to, I'm right-handed, so I focus with my right eye, but I leave my left eye open. I don't close it. Lots of times we close our eye because you're looking through your lens. I leave my right eye open on the trail so that I can gauge how far away that tree is. If I close it, I don't know the distance because I'm only seeing what my lens shows me. And why is that important? Because I can get really close. And when you get really close, sometimes nature does something silly. So that's the same owl about a month later. And it wasn't fully fledged, it hopped out of the nest, and I got too close. I closed my left eye, and I was only looking through the lens. And I just wanted to get one step closer, just one more step, because I'll get a better picture, and I'll be able to get it published, and everyone will love me, and it'll be great, and I can sell millions of them, right? I mean, it's all going through your head when you're out there. Your heart's pumping, and you lose track of where you are. Well, this guy said, you're too close. And it showed me. It fluffed its wings. It made itself look as big as it could. That's one tell. It snapped its beak. It was going click, click, click. And I saw that and I walked right through it. And this guy, nope. So it decided to fly. Well, it wasn't sure it could fly. So it flew 10 yards out over the water and it dove into the water. And I just thought, oh no, what's it going to do? You didn't know owls could swim. So it's doing the breaststroke, right? And just at that time, as soon as it hit the water, that's the dinner bell. Remember that raptor that we saw at the very beginning, that eagle? As soon as anything hits the water, that's a dinner bell for those that are tuned to that wavelength.
Where was that one taken?
This is down, so without giving away my honey hole, my spot. It's down right just north of the Minnesota River. This is a young bald eagle, and it's so close to my lens that I couldn't get the whole thing in the lens. So it was literally from here to there. So now what do? I chased that thing into the water. I felt compelled to stay there. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just tie my boots and I'll go in the water and I'll save the owl, right? It's just going to swim away from me. You can't do that. I never should have got that close to begin with. Now, to end this story quickly, because I know we're running short on time, this eagle never got that owl. And that was one sleepless night. I went back the next day and I found the two owls sitting in the tree looking at me like, you better not get close enough. And as long as we're talking about water, it's fun to see the other things. Anyone know what this is, other than a snake? This is a northern water snake. This one was about 4 feet long. They're very, very colorful in the water. When they're out of the water, you can't even tell. They're muted. Their colors they're just beautiful, and they're everywhere. They don't bite unless you put your hand in their mouth. They're not poisonous. And then I think I'll run through a quick few slides here. This is chestnut-sided warbler. Just some of the fun color. Yeah, and it was listening to the shutter on my camera. It was going, huh? What? Huh? Yeah, scarlet tanager. Yeah, and they're migratory birds. They'll come through in the spring. They go to their migratory stomping grounds a little north of here, and then in the fall they'll come back. Everyone knows this guy. And this is over at Normandale Lake. Now here's another one that I call half a buck. This is down at 9 Mile Creek eating the natural grass down there, and if you just do a little, he sticks his head up. So I saw his rump, and I didn't know if it was a he or a she, and I just clicked and, who's that? Now here's another fun one. Who doesn't love the little red squirrels? Occasionally, now this was down at Black Dog Power Plant. It was 22 below zero, and this was when Black Dog used coal, and then they had that water, that little lake that they used to cool the plant. They've switched over to natural gas, and so that water's not open in the winter. But this was 22 below. They just tuck these are trumpeter swans. They tuck their necks over their backs and stay warm. It was just incredibly cold that day, and I was only able to stay up for a while. Occasionally we do run into things that aren't nice on the trail. We run into death on the trail. This next shot, I hope, does a good shot of showing death on the trail and just sort of what it can look like. Addie Matson, Addie's not here, but Addie knows this particular bird. This was a pelican. 3 pelicans were stranded a few years ago. They didn't make it out for migration. This one was sick, and there was a number of people that watched it. It made it about 6 weeks in, and then one day I came and found it after a nice snowfall, and I thought I'd try to do it justice by giving it a shot and sharing this particular shot. We moved from death on the trail to fun on the trail. And then I'll show you one that everybody knows. That's a pileated, and occasionally, since this is my next to the last shot, occasionally the wildlife will tell you when you've gotten too close, and it's funny. They have a way of sharing exactly what they think about you. So when you get too close, occasionally you get this. So that was what this guy thought of me, getting just a little bit too close. It was looking at me. It turned around, it lifted its tail, and as soon as they lift their tail, you know exactly what's coming. And I was actually smiling when I took this shot because I knew what was coming. So that's the end of the slides. I don't know if we have time for...
We have time for 2 questions.
2. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the different calls of some of the animals. I know like on the cardinal, it sounds like a wolf whistle with some beeps afterwards. Are there different messages they're sending that we don't know, but does anybody study whether they actually, their calls are just tonally or otherwise different enough that they're actually saying different things?
Yes to all of those, yes. So first of all, they speak in code, and most of the time I think they're laughing at me. But yeah, there are different, if you listen, there are different calls. There's mating calls, there's distress calls, there's anger calls. This is how they speak. This is how they communicate. So, great question. There's lots more research online. When you have time, that kind of thing, I would encourage everyone if you're interested in how they communicate. One more question, anyone? Anyone want to be brave? So I shared earlier that I gave a presentation a number of years ago to Poplar Bridge. It was all the students and their parents, about 500 kids. And I couldn't stop the questions. And really the difference between the kids and the adults, the kids aren't afraid to ask the questions. Did that tempt anyone? Yeah.
Well, you didn't mention the 9 Mile Creek definition. I thought it was the fact that the water started at Lake Minnetonka and ended up in the Minnesota River, that would be a 9-mile distance.
That's a great question, a good assumption. So 9 Mile Creek is actually about 14 miles long. So why do they call it 9 Mile Creek? Because in the old days, it was that creek that was 9 miles away from Fort Snelling. You know, the one that's 9 miles? Because Fort Snelling used to be the edge of humanity, right? And anything west of Fort Snelling, you take your life in your own hands because there's snakes and there's raptors and there's coyotes. So you go down to that creek that's 9 miles away. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I heard a similar story. You said it was also 9 miles from there to the Shakopee Indian place? 18 miles.
18, yeah.
Or something, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
Water their wagons there.
it certainly is researching and looking it up. And when I give these presentations, it's my intent to learn as well as to educate. So if you can educate me, if I can learn something that I'm presenting incorrectly, please let me know.
Thank you, Dick.
Yes.
Wonderful presentation. Wonderful.
Thanks.